In our last video, we learned how to use the coalesce and isNull functions to work with null values, whose purpose was to substitute non-null values for null values. In this video, we're going to learn how to use the grouping function. Now, in a previous video, we learned how to use the rollup and cube operators to add summary rows to summary queries. And if you don't remember that, I suggest you go back and watch that video again before watching this one. Now, the reason why I'm covering this function this late into the series is because of the order in which we are learning our functions. We covered the case function in about 3 or 4 videos ago, and we needed to know that in order to use the grouping function. So now that my big excuse is out of the way, let's get to it. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the SQL Server Series. This video is brought to you in reference to Joe Marach's SQL Server 2016 for developers. If you're interested in purchasing a copy of this book, then please follow the link in the video description below. The grouping function is used to assign a value other than null to any column in a summary row that isn't being summarized. This function accepts the name of a column as its argument, and the column you specify must be one of the columns that are included in the group by clause that includes the rollup or cube operator. Now, the use of this function is mainly only for summarizing columns that can contain null values. Otherwise, there's no real need for it. So, let's dive in. So the first thing I'm going to do is reiterate my syntax here, and it is grouping. So I'm going to say, hey, grouping. I'll put up 2 parentheses in here. And then in here is going to be the column name that you pass in for your grouping function. And then we're going to start by selecting all from vendors. And this has to be from my AP database. So I've got to make sure I've got that going. So we're going to step into our vendors table. And then here we're going to pull some columns out. The column I want to pull out is vendor state. So I'm just going to say, hey, case when, and then we're going to use the grouping function. Case when vendor state is null, then we're going to want to display the word all. And so what the grouping function is doing here is saying whenever vendor state is null for a result that includes the rollup or cube operator, it's going to automatically return a value of 1. And so we want to display the word all when it returns that value of 1 for the null column that we pass in. And then if that does not result to null, then we're just going to display the vendor state for whatever value is in the column. And then we're going to end this as our vendor state. That's going to be the name of our column. And then we're going to open up another case here. We're going to say case, and then this time we're going to say case when. Then I'm going to call up grouping again. And then I want to say when vendor city, if we use the rollup or cube operator and vendor city is null, then it's going to be equal to 1. So if vendor city is equal to 1, which in this case would be null, then we want to display the words all. Else, then we'll just display whatever is stored in that column, which is the vendor city, and we're going to name that as vendor city. And then after that, I want to get the count of all of our quantity vendors. I'm just going to name that as quantity vendors. This is going to give us the count of all vendors that we have here in our vendors table. And then we're going to group by vendor state, vendor city with rollup. We're going to use a rollup operator for this one. And I'm going to add a where clause in here. I just want to say where vendor state is in, I'll say Iowa. And then I want to add one more in here. Let's put New Jersey for this one. And then to close this out, I'm just going to order by vendor state in a descending order and vendor city in descending order. And then we're going to run this query. Now, if you see our result set here, our vendor state column, which is our first case statement here that we named vendor state, is displaying the values of the vendor state as it should from our else clause here. But once it runs into a situation where vendor state is equal to 1, we're taking our grouping function here, and instead of it displaying 1, we're going to put all there. And then we're doing the same thing for vendor city here in our second case. When we run into a no value that's equal to 1, then we display all. And then we just have our count of our vendors from our vendors table here. That's grouped by vendor states that are in Iowa and New Jersey. So it's important to keep in mind when using the grouping function that if a null value is assigned to a specified column as the result of the rollup or cube operator, the grouping function returns a value of 1. Otherwise, it's going to return 0. So that is all for this video. In our next video, we're going to learn how to use the ranking functions. So if you're interested in our next video, head on over to database-tutorials.com and check it out. See you next time.